people in your community coming to you and complaining about any issue, right?
Right now, to be very candid, it's been about street safety. Street safety has been a big one, especially the last couple of days we've gotten an influx. That can mean a lot of things. So I was explaining, traffic calming measures is a big one. Infrastructure, protected lanes for cyclists, traffic signaling for pedestrian safety. So that means even if something as simple as a stoplight or a crosswalk for someone, that can genuinely mean the difference between life and death. So we've been trying to bring more awareness to that, and that's something that's been resonating quite a bit. Just the other day, actually just this morning, yesterday, a constituent came up, contacted the office, and they explained that, you know, this intersection here, it's complicated. It's been it's been prominent to have accidents and cause community members have stress and have worries, and those are genuine concerns. So what we try to do is bring awareness to it. We try to work together with our city agencies, our government partners, and DOT is a big one. And how do you get that fixed? How do you get that resolved? So one, not only is it safe for people, but again, perception also precedes reality. So we want to make people safe, but we also want them to feel safe. And that's a big one for us. So this is why I'm a big supporter of trying to implement big traffic, street safety, because it matters. It really does matter. It is a difference between life and death. And I think just on a basic human level, you're all New Yorkers. And if you're not from New York, you are New York now. So I consider you a New Yorker. You deserve to be able to walk on the street safely. So whatever we can do to push that, that's the goal, really.
Completely. Yeah. And you mentioned mental health, which is something that you were talking about mental health earlier. So see right here, living, breathing proof that you have a connection between mental health being, you know, of course it's an issue.
It's scary. It's scary. Parents, children, students. It's a big one.
Exactly.
Question, you're an elected official?
Yes.
What's your name? Maybe I've heard of you.
Juan, Ardila. So I cover parts of Queens, so Long Island City, Sunnyside, Woodside, Ridgewood, Maspeth.
For city council?
No, Assembly.
Assemblyman.
Yeah.
So Long Island City, Sunnyside.
Woodside, Maspeth, Ridgewood.
And when people come and complain or, you know, point fingers,
Yes.
when they talk about street safety, right?
Yeah.
So you say you
Yes.
get a lot of complaints.
Yeah.
Do they talk about impact on their businesses? Do they talk about
No,
schools?
mostly about school. Businesses, I haven't heard too much. So there's going to be some pushback for some businesses might not. For example, if you put biking infrastructure, some businesses might not appreciate it, right? Because they'll say this is blocking the flow of traffic for my business. You know, you're prohibiting consumers. Other folks can make the argument that this can actually attract more business because now you have other ways to mobilize your goods from point A to point B. So it's an ongoing conversation. Aside from that, schools I've heard from a lot, just because children are the ones that are really my children and seniors are the most vulnerable when it comes to street safety issues. So that's why we try to be very responsive. So, I mean, something as simple as like a crosswalk, stoplight, stop sign, a pothole, a protected bike lane. Like, again, this makes the difference, and I can't see why that would be, why people would be offended by that. It's just, the whole goal is to protect people. So. Look, people bike. That's just the reality of New York City.
Really?
We can ensure the utmost safety. And again, even if you're a pro-car individual, right? Like I unpopular opinion here. I'm not anti-bike. I support bike lanes, but I also do drive. No, that's okay. That's okay. But even as a driver myself, I'll say I do support the protected lanes because not only it protects the cyclist, it protects the pedestrian. Those are the two most important. In a lot of ways, it also protects the driver because that prevents you from doing something that, God forbid, you don't want to be in a position of doing. So, I mean, this is a win-win-win for everybody involved. That's why it is important. I believe roads are public space. I believe they should be shared by everybody, and everybody who's on it should be safe. So
have fun telling that to the people who complain.
Juan, correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
If a driver hits a cyclist, no matter what the circumstances are, even if it seems like the cyclist would be at fault,
Sure.
the driver's always at fault, right?
I mean, you're the one with the bigger. You're the one that's causing the damage, unfortunately. If you're a cyclist, you're at risk always.
Actually,
How is that okay though with AI now becoming a thing and then people that are uninsured
Sure.
with those bikes and
Yeah.
there are also like some cultural norm ideas because we don't give civic education.
Exactly. It's still a concept. I'm joking. It's still a concept that's in development. So, for example, in my district, we started getting a big bike culture, and it's been growing ever since for the past couple of years, and that's something that we want to be very responsive to, and we want to amplify that and support that, and also make sure that safety is a big priority for everybody. Because look, if you're a bicyclist in New York City, I don't have to tell you, it is scary for anybody. You can be the biggest biker.
Not just bikes, like the motorcycles, what are they called? So like
The e-bikes.
Mopeds.
Mopeds,
yeah.
They're now going to increase in my district.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
Queens, even though our city councilman hates it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Assemblyman. I'm so excited to talk to you. Direct democracy with the engineers of the future.
Sure.
We have 14-year-olds here.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Like their ideas, because AI was released to the public November 2022.
Yeah.
With all the infrastructural change company, everything,
Yeah.
the engineers that are young, that are now AI babies or AI teens, I don't know what we're gonna call you guys, but the Y2K babies know how bad it is to get AI into all these systems because there's so many errors, biases, subjective ideas of what decent means for all communities. So in cars or accidents, who's going to pay? Like PIs, personal injury attorneys, the worst. To be very honest, because they're not regulated. And I would ask, please, Assemblyman
Ardila.
Ardila.
If you say Ardila, it means squirrel in Spanish.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know, some names are like really.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
I'm Kimberly Cruz, so
Nice to meet you.
But yes.
Smart people, not me, have actually. No, but I mean like people who actually like specialize in this. Like people who are well versed in like these issues probably know that like AI can't solve them. And second, how did you learn about like the whole idea of street safety? Because I know like your constituents gave you like the impetus to learn about it, but how did you learn about it?
It was a growing process for me. So I come from a place in Queens called Maspeth.
That's where you live?
I was born and raised there. I live in Ridgewood, Maspeth. I'm from Maspeth. In Maspeth, it is considered a transit desert, right? For example, they just brought in city bike in 2023. Very limited buses. There's a Q58, you rode it, and the Q59.
And the Q54.
And the Q54, but there are no train lines in Maspeth. So I grew up in a very transit desert. When you grow up in a transit desert, I'm sure you know what that means. There's going to be a heavy reliance on vehicles, on cars. Now, Maspeth is a neighborhood that's been predominantly senior-based, generational-based. So when you grow up around that, you're not exposed to anything regarding street safety. You start to learn quickly what the issues are, why this could be a public health risk. That means asthma rates increases. That means respiratory issues. That can be environmental issues. So that's how I first started getting.
So you learned on the job, basically.
I learned as I got older what was happening, and then as I started
so over time.
Over time, as I became exposed to it,
okay,
there is value to having protected lanes.
I took a
There
more
is
direct
value.
approach.
No, I mean, to each their own. There's no one size fits all. That was just my experience. We have, unfortunately, for example, a deliverista, a gentleman, immigrant Vietnamese father who passed away because he was delivering food on his bike and he got hit by a vehicle.
Ooh.
I mean, that's just, there's no way there's no argument around it. That's just completely unacceptable, right? That's just not something you want to see in your communities, and over time, that's how we became aware of it. And look, it's a topic that I think it's a very youthful topic, but I think it's a topic that can resonate with many people from all ages and all ends of the spectrum. I mean, I have some Republicans in my district as well, and a massive portion of it. There's an argument to be made. They're actually the loudest ones in support of green infrastructure and street safety. So, I mean, look, this is something it's being talked about a lot more within our youth, but it's also been resonating with older constituencies because ultimately it's about street safety.
Can I pose a question?
Yeah.
Question. Correct if I'm wrong. Street safety, at least like to the public, isn't usually a partisan issue, right? Like you wouldn't typically hear, and correct if I'm wrong, a Republican calling a street safety project woke or anything like that, right?
Not to me personally. I'm sure it's been said.
What happened?
I'm sure it's been said. So, for example, you heard of Sammy's Law?
Yeah. We actually went to Albany to support Sam's Law.
Okay. So, Sammy's Law, for those of you who don't know, means allowing New York City to reduce the speed limit from 25 to 20 miles an hour. You'll have people who will say that is wokeism.
That is what?
Wokeism.
Really?
That's just an argument.
It's still all of that
it's-
just to put up a new sign though.
So that's why, like, look, some people will be.
But what are some negatives though? Think about the negatives.
Negative
what would
of-
the negatives of, what would people say in contrary? You have to see both sides so that you can make the best solution for all. So
Yeah.
the negatives would be you're getting fined out of nowhere because you're not told at the right time that they're
Yeah.
gonna add this regulation. So those are these fines during the worst economic crisis that we're having because we're in 5 wars
Yeah.
internationally. So that's
But
one.
US is at 5?
We're in 5
I
wars.
thought only
yes.
2.
We're in 5. There's Somalia, we have to think about the ASEAN region, we have to think about the Gaza region, we have to think about
Right.
Red Sea, Latin America, so Colombia right now, yesterday, had the judicial branch got attacked.
I know we're going-
Similarly to 1987 when they killed 11 out of 24 Supreme Court justices. So Happy New Year, we're in a new year, Lunar New Year for all that celebrate, but there are things that the engineers and every other American
Yep.
soul, citizen, long-term resident visitor who comes here and breathes our air, drinks our waters, need to know that we're getting attacked with all our infrastructure. So we talked about that. We kind of briefly did.
Yeah.
But we need the climate change scientists. We need all these other professionals, technocrats, I guess, council. Where, what were you saying, sir? I didn't catch your name. You were so bright.
My name is Ben,
Ben.
and thank you.
You're right. You need to get the education through professional school, and you do need to do the walk and talk.
Yep.
Because the people are alive, right? And they're primary sources, so it's both. So we need the technocrats. You guys are the technocrats are getting all these amazing degrees, and we need the talkers who can make the legislation happen and write and say there are 5 wars. So how do you decide? How do you decide is it decent to go to these wars? How do you reduce inequalities when we have to start targeting infrastructure in different ways?
Yeah.
Sorry, I know. But it's just to excite them that it's right now, it's 2024.
Absolutely. I
Sorry,
just want
yeah.
to shift the conversation
no
back
worries,
a little
no
bit. Okay, so we now have our posters back in each of our tables. So using a color that you don't